Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Education Business Meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. Time is now 7 p.m. With me this evening, I have board members Howard White, Ashley Golias, Jasmine Prissy, Mary Ellen Flaherty Ludwig, Sherry McCready Pritchett, and on virtually online, I have Kara Nelson Bakey. I also have Dr. Estrella and her cabinet here this evening for the meeting. We can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you making public comments this evening, there is a sign-up sheet. I believe this is at the entrance. If you haven't signed it, the sheet, please sign it. And who's going to do, we're going to do spotlight. Sherry McCready will be doing spotlight for this evening.
Good evening, everyone. Brian McMahon's LaShanti James awarded as the 2025 High School Assistant Principal of the Year by CAS. The Norwalk Board of Education wishes to spotlight Assistant Principal LaShanti James at Brian McMahon High School for being recognized as the 2025 High School Assistant Principal of the Year by the Connecticut Association of Schools. We wholeheartedly agree with CAS that this award is a testament to your unwavering dedication, visionary leadership, and tireless commitment to the well-being and success of every member of your school community. James has been a member of the National Association of Secondary School Principals since 2023 and was previously nominated as a CAS High School Assistant Principal of the Year in 2024. In addition to her school leadership responsibilities, James is also the district facilitator for the My Sister's Keeper program in Norwalk Public Schools. She is the dedicated Connecticut RISE administrator and serves as a supervising administrator for social studies, art, and music at Brian McMahon. James has also served on numerous equity, inclusion, and enrichment committees during her tenure in the district. James will now be considered for the Norwalk High School Assistant Principal of the Year Award by the National Association of Secondary School Principals. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can everyone hear this on Zoom? Is this for Zoom? Yes, okay, thank you. First, thank you to the board for allowing me this time to speak. I would like to say that each time I receive congratulations or wishes from parents, teachers, colleagues, and students, I find it difficult to accept the compliment that I deserve this acknowledgement or award. In reality, the accomplishment is a testament to the partnerships I have developed with the Norwalk community and the investment of many of the teachers, colleagues, and leaders that have made in me. One of the greatest principals in New Haven Public Schools once said, her name is Jeffrey Frazier, "You cannot work in a school without loving children first." I would like to expand on that to say, you cannot lead a school without loving people first.
Mm-hmm.
It is only appropriate that I thank Dr. Estrella and her leadership team for providing opportunities of development and encouragement that put kids first. My team at Brian McMahon High School, led by Barbara Wood. I would also like to acknowledge leadership can be a lonely position, but I know I'm in good company at Brian McMahon High School. To the teachers, counselors, security staff, secretarial, colleagues, thank you so much for always encouraging me. To Dr. Lewis and James Crouch, who were instrumental in bringing me to Norwalk in my hiring. And also, I would like to acknowledge the parents and students for trusting me in the most critical years of their educational journey. Last but not least, I'd like to thank my family, my children who are here, who have made room for my commitments, to my husband who has been supportive of my leadership journey, and to my sisters who happen to both be in the education field for being my cheerleaders. Last but not least, to my parents. My dad, who is often the voice of reason and the source of laughter, and my mom, who is here today, who showed me that you can be a woman, a mom, and a wife, and still accomplish your dreams. Dr. Pamela Monk Kelly. Been a special education teacher for over 45 years. So thank you again for this acknowledgement, and thank you again for supporting me on this journey of the award, because I wouldn't have got it without the support of my community.
Okay, that's it for me to use options. When we were asked to speak to LaShante's work, we had no doubt that she would get this award because of the outstanding commitment and effort that she always puts forward in the betterment of kids. Leading MSK as well as other initiatives in the district just speaks to her unconditional love for our scholars that goes beyond just the Brian McMahon community, but goes a full circle around the Norwalk community as a whole. So we are so proud of you. And I had no doubt that you were gonna get this. And I let the committee know. So we're just delighted. Do you mind taking a picture with the board? And of course. Of course. Okay.
In the front is the best.
I saw Barbara Wood here.
I give you a shout out before you
get
go.
one with Justin.
You want that good? I want her to know I shouted her
Yeah,
out.
I'm gonna get one with Justin. We can bring other people in.
No, no, with her.
Right. Well, yeah, with the board. That's my man.
You want me in this?
Not this one.
Step back.
That's good, yeah, okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now whoever else you want.
But now we can come in.
There's something?
You want a
Brian McMahon,
or anything?
Brian McMahon.
Family.
Well, let's do this one first.
Okay.
Okay.
Your family.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Great, okay.
Thank you.
Do we know?
And then like
Hold on.
the Brian McMahon.
McMahon.
And Tam.
Yes, we made it. That's so my mom, you had to get your door.
Oh, poor thing.
Brian McMahon. Even though you don't want to claim it, Norman Tide.
Ring the door. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Perfect, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you again for the time. Welcome. Congratulations.
Well, Ashanti, I know that I, for one, will say to you that at every event that I have seen you, your energy, your positivity just shines.
Thank
You can see and feel the love that you have for the students. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you so much.
Are there any public comments?
Yeah, next item on the agenda is public comments. If we can start with a couple, I see a hands up online. Reminder that it's a 3-minute. Please state your name and your address. Yeah.
Take one online. So anybody online, if you would please raise your hand now if you want to make any public comments in the first person. Yep. We'll go down the line. The first person is Jason. And Jason, if you unmute.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Jason Christopher, 1 Naples Avenue. I'm speaking on behalf of the Norwalk Early Childhood Center. My daughter attended the 3s half day last year, and she's currently enrolled in the 4s full time this year. I want to express our deep concern regarding the proposed changes to NECC. As parents and advocates for the children who depend on this program, we strongly believe that keeping NECC at 11 Allen Road with its 6 classrooms intact is in the best interest of students, families, and staff. We understand the need to accommodate 2 additional pre-K classrooms, but disrupting the established NECC community is not the solution. Please consider retaining the 6 classrooms at NECC on Allen Road and relocate the 2 new classrooms to an alternative location. This model in the elementary schools did not work in the past, and please use the 2025-2026 school year to develop a long-term plan that keeps all NECC classrooms together in a single location that meets the needs and students of staff. NECC is a thriving community uniquely designed to serve children with special needs and alongside their typically developing peers. Dispersing classrooms across different locations would undermine years of progress. Specialized services, collaboration, accessibility, speech therapy are all hallmarks of NECC's success and all under one roof. This cannot be easily replicated elsewhere. Moving these classrooms to the elementary schools raises serious concerns. NECC provides daily on-site services with an inclusive mix of special education students, and typical elementary schools also face restraints, and adding these responsibilities risk compromising the quality of services. Additionally, NECC's single-story buildings, specialized playground, and equipment designed for children with mobility aids cannot be replaced in these alternative spaces. We look to models like Stanford and other surrounding towns to successfully house all early childhood classrooms in a single facility. And so why are we going backward? This centralized approach fosters collaboration, efficiency, and high-quality education. We urge Norwalk to follow a similar path. Let's build on NECC success rather than disrupt it. There was no communication prior to these arrangements being made, and no parent input or parent engagement should be or was a priority. We are facing serious budget cuts at NPS. We must prioritize and communicate with parents and let them be a part of all conversations. Thank you for your time and consideration.
The next person is Dr. Lynn Moore.
Is the mic on? Do I need it on? Thank you. So I'm Lynn Moore. I reside at 813 Foxborough Drive in Norwalk. I'm president of NASA, as well as president of the Board of Education Coalition of Unions. This statement is from all of us as union leaders. That means Mary Jordan, Lynn Moore. That means Steve Browning, Ryan Morris, and Hope White. Last week on January 7th, a number of administrators received emails during the workday notifying of their June terminations. As we approach a challenging budget season and more cuts are expected, we urge the board to require district officials to adopt humane and respectful practices when making personnel changes related to budget cuts. Our perspective is rooted in a commitment to maintaining the dignity of educators and fostering a professional environment that values our contributions, as well as ensuring that there will be minimal disruption in the learning environment. We request that the following practices be implemented. Union representation. Ensure that employees are notified of job cuts in person in private conferences arranged in advance with union representation present. Notification practices. Please do not send notification emails regarding terminations or position cuts to individuals. Such messages disrupt not only the employees, but also disrupts the classrooms, the school environment. Please avoid disruptive communication. Please, there should not be personal contact during the workday to inform employees of position eliminations or changes. Transparent planning. Have the unions involved when the district has collected, devised a written plan regarding significant personnel and program changes that's going to affect the career and livelihood of our members.
30 seconds, Lynn.
Thank you. We often hear the stakeholders emphasized in our district, but we don't really have stakeholders. The unions are not involved, such as NECC. That plan was developed without engaging union and employee stakeholders. We want you please to restore collaboration. Back in the day, we had collaboration. We were involved as union leaders when the district was preparing its budget. Please engage us so that we are involved in meaningful discussions. And if everyone can adhere to those practices, then as unions, we can actually get out and collaborate and get out to vote and support and lobby for the Board of Education
Thank you,
budget.
Lynn.
You're very welcome.
One live person extra?
Sure, so the next person online is Melissa Matsuka, excuse me.
I'm Melissa Matuska. I live at 1 Longshore Avenue. My son Miles is a former special needs student at Norwalk Early Childhood Center. During his time there, he experienced extraordinary growth from a developmentally delayed 3-year-old to a more or less on-schedule kindergartner. I'm confused and disappointed to hear NECC will be shut down in favor of a decentralized pre-K program within Norwalk's elementary schools. I found NECC's team and dedicated facility to be an invaluable resource in Miles's journey, and I can't imagine a scenario where this closure will be beneficial to children like him. When Miles aged out of the Birth to 3 program, he moved to a half-day pre-K program at NECC. Having a centralized, dedicated location with instructors and therapists focused on his needs for growth made a world of a difference in his pre-kindergarten experience. These specialized teachers are better equipped in not only dealing with the children's special needs, but also the parents' needs. If it weren't for this step-up program, I feel Miles wouldn't be as successful as he is today, and I wouldn't have been able to help him as effectively along the way. Everyone understands the need for NECC to expand. The shared building with the senior center is far from ideal. The fact remains, though, this is an existing classroom building, and it's the senior center that has converted classrooms into their use, not the other way around. The most logistically sound and economical answer to NECC's space issues would be to relocate the senior center and let NECC expand into the already existing facility located at 11 Allen Road. The proposed 2025-26 budget to integrate this program into the elementary schools would need to increase as special education instructor salaries by almost $1 million. Therapists and instructors would likely be spread thinly to various elementary schools throughout Norwalk and would be required for students requiring everyday guidance. In a fiscal year when we're already charged with decreasing the budget by $10 million, this doesn't make sense to incur these additional expenses. Speaking of budgets, one of the proposed budget cuts was to have nurses split time between schools. This strikes me as wildly irresponsible, and as many of these special needs students require a nurse with their IEPs, as some have physical restrictions as extreme as feeding tubes and colostomy bags. Replacing full-time nurses with an increase in 911 calls because the nurse is across town sounds short-sighted at best. By freeing up the $1 million of proposed special education instructors for moving a program that doesn't need to be moved, we could free up some of the budget to keep nurses at the schools full-time. I am so thankful for NECC for the services it provides. 2 years ago, I wrote to our governor and state and federal congressmen that the state of Connecticut should share how we are a model of best practices for providing early intervention for a child with special needs. The step-up transition for each each program allows gradual incremental growth for both parents and children. Our neighboring towns are currently in lockstep with us in keeping 3 and 4-year-old special needs special K programs separate from the currently overwhelming. Thank you.
The next person who signed up is Elise Williams.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, so I did not, this is my first time coming to one of these meetings. I did not prepare anything, but I reside 24 Mid-Rocks Drive in Norwalk. And I'm here just to talk to everyone as well about NECC. My son is currently a 3-year-old in the program there. He receives speech, OT, PT, and he also receives the developmental coaching. So from when he started this year to now when he started over the summer, I've seen so much growth with him, with the way he's able to walk up steps, to the way he speaks, to the way his face lights up when he walks into the building. And I just, I can't express how thankful I am for NECC and for the community that he currently is in. And I can't imagine him being a 3-year-old. He's very nervous in a lot of situations, going into a building where he's immediately going in with 5th graders. I just have a really hard time kind of grappling that situation. Also, my daughter's at Wolf Fit, so I know that would be hopefully one of the schools that would receive one of these preschool classrooms. And when I look at it, I don't see the same ADA accessibility. I don't see the same playground where my son right now with his PT and OT, he's in a really wonderful situation where he has that whole outdoor playground and space where they're able to work on his therapies. They have the sensory gyms inside. I know they've put a lot of money and building into making sure that these buildings fit the needs of these children. So if they are to move into all the elementary schools, I'm just really curious how each elementary school is going to have the correct resources for them and also the correct building, the correct space, everything just to make it such a thriving environment for them, how to make it so it's not intimidating for these little kids. I also see the collaboration. I see the way my son he's not a untypical kid, I guess you'd say. He has dyspraxia and it's something that's not as known. So I think, right now I like the way that therapists are able to talk with each other, to come up with ideas on how to service him, to help each other. And I see that collaboration. And I just wonder with some of these kids, how the collaboration is going to be lost when they're broken up into all the different schools. I have a lot of friends in special education, different districts, and I know that in Norwalk, I've heard in the past, it did not succeed in this model. I know other schools and other districts that it did not, and they're all moving towards this centralized preschool, especially with especially with the oversight. And I just wonder, how are we going to avoid the same things that happened in the past from happening again? How are we still going to have oversight to make sure the kids are receiving their correct services? And just how are we going to keep that feel with the parents, the kids, the connection? I have a lot of other things too, but I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Have something else? Somebody else online?
Yeah, next online is Michael Sander.
Remind him we have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Great. Thanks so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm here on behalf of the Narragansett School Governance Council. I was fortunate enough to be selected as the parent co-chair. Just very briefly, having attended the meeting at Brian McMahon last week, obviously the budget issues that I was not necessarily aware of prior to the meeting quickly became a concern, as I imagine it probably is for any parent or guardian of a child who is a student of NPS. And, mindful of the reliance on federal grants, as was discussed during the meeting, it just still seems a little bit shocking that some of the suggestions involved consolidating, pretty crucial programs, resources, as we've already heard here tonight. Things like sharing nurses or guidance counselors do not seem like the sort of things that we should be facing as a district, in this day and age. And just by way of quick example, one of the things that we were thinking about improving through the Norwalk SGC, excuse me, the Merrimack SGC, was renovating the boys' bathrooms in the older wing of the school. But once we heard about the cuts and the concerns over the capital budget, we quickly had to rule that out and pivot our focus. And went through the center. Very fortunate to have benefited from adequately funded programs and capital improvements. I would just encourage anyone involved to do whatever we can to fight for our kids and fund the programs appropriately. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schrager. Next, we have Brandolyn Williams.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Fulton Williams. I live at 26 Belden Avenue. First, I want to thank everyone for being here and thank you for the service you provide to the students here in Norwalk Public Schools. My son attended NECC from 2021 to 2023. I also served as the PTO president during my time there, and I currently serve as the parent representative on the Norwalk Early Childhood Collaborative. He is currently a first grade student at Cranberry, and he receives the following: speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, social work. He has an AAC device, and he also has a one-to-one RBT. I collaborate with many of the amazing staff members from central office all the way to the front office on a consistent basis. I vividly remember the day he started at NECC on his 3rd birthday, and while times were difficult with COVID, I truly appreciate our time at NECC. This school is what I needed as a parent to work through the emotions of entering the special education world. I am deeply disturbed by the decision to close NECC. While Cranberry and other elementary schools have a successful pre-kindergarten classroom option, I strongly believe parents should have the option for a small traditional preschool experience. From my experience exiting birth to 3 with a 3-year-old with developmental needs, I would not be comfortable with the idea of sending him to a school with over 300 to 400 students. Parents should have a choice or an option. At the time of this decision, Norwalk Public Schools does not have an active special education parent group. This announcement would have been better received with more information about this transition to ease the frustration that naturally comes with having a child with special needs. NECC needed more classrooms 2 years ago, and at a time where more support is needed from the district in various ways, the district is turning its back on a model that is successful, a model other districts have and continue to pour into, a model that truly benefited my son and his needs. The collaboration, synergy, culture of belonging was unique to the NECC experience, and it set the tone for the beginning of my public school journey as a parent. I am concerned that the quality of related services will be compromised with excessive caseloads, lack of experience in the nuances of early education, and becoming dependent on itinerant staff. NECC has the only full-time physical therapist who is a critical asset to NECC. I am concerned about lost time with her moving from school to school. I am also extremely concerned about the integrated parent and family experience that NECC provided, which allowed me to connect and create relationships with families of all needs. Will the district work with the Park and Recreational Department to make sure the communication boards are placed on all elementary school playgrounds? These are just a few of my concerns, of my many concerns. I conclude with the belief that perception is everything. Sending more work and responsibility to the elementary schools while proposing shared assistant principals, which are unsung heroes of most schools, and shared nurses is alarming and chaotic. While cuts need to be made to balance the budget, this decision is not giving parents an option for an environment that is small, developmentally appropriate, and curated to meet the most complex needs. We are at a time in our culture where we know some kids need more than others. NECC was a solution to this district at one point in time. We are losing a very special and unique and necessary experience that adds immense value to this community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Two more. There's 2 left. So Abby Shiner and George. So Abby, you're first. Feel free to unmute.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Abby Steiner. I live at 41 Wolf Pit Avenue in Norwalk, Connecticut. I'm also speaking regarding the closing of NECC. NECC provides a service to our youngest and most vulnerable children that simply cannot be matched by moving these classrooms into the elementary schools. To put a 3-year-old developmentally delayed child into a building of 300 to 400 children seems unconscionable to me. It is scary enough to start preschool on the small scale that NECC offers, but to throw them into elementary schools would be terrifying. In your justification for this move, you stated that having students attending their district home elementary school would provide a smoother transition once they enter kindergarten and beyond. However, with school choice being so prevalent in Norwalk, what if there are older siblings at a different school? Now you have parents needing to manage transportation to and from various schools instead of at one school. You also indicated that 11 Allen Road can no longer house the number of classes needed to accommodate all of the children entering preschool with IEPs. Does Norwalk not own the building? If the senior center is renting from the town of Norwalk, perhaps it's time to let the seniors know about other properties that are available for them to rent from the town. If the town owns the building, can't the town use it as they see fit? In a year when the superintendent has been mandated to cut over $10 million from her budget, it seems like an incredible waste of money to close NECC. While it would save maybe $155,000 in operating costs, it would cost well over $1 million to staff the elementary schools appropriately to meet the needs of all the students at NECC, which leads to the biggest concern of all. How are you going to guarantee that NECC students are in fact receiving the services their IEPs indicate? We all know that caseloads for service providers are already overloaded. Are you now expecting service providers at the elementary schools to incorporate these new children into their already overloaded schedules? Are you going to lift the hiring freeze and hire more service providers for each elementary school where you put these preschoolers? Are you sure that every provider in the elementary schools is certified to work with preschool children? In most cases, working with pre-K children requires its own special certification. Have you done your due diligence and checked that proper certifications are in place? In closing NECC and moving these children into the elementary schools, did you think about the need for ADA compliant playgrounds? During the warm weather, PT and OT sessions are held outside on those ADA compliant playgrounds. Are you going to ensure that all playgrounds where NECC children are moved are upgraded to be ADA compliant? And finally, in the 2 years that I was a parent at NECC, I met the actual principal of the school a total of 0 times. 2 years, and I never met the actual principal. But you know who I did meet? Miss Allison. You know who I did email with? Miss Allison. You know who was at parent nights and PTO meetings and IEP meetings for my child? Miss Allison. To eliminate her position is a slap in the face for all that she has done for that school since its inception. What you've said to her is, okay, great, you've done your job. Thanks so much. Your position is eliminated. I propose that you keep the 6 classroom currently operating at NECC where they are for the 25-26 school year and use that year to either relocate the senior center or find another suitable location to house NECC beginning the 26-27 school year. You made the decision to close NECC with no input from staff working with these children, the people who know their every need, who work with these families day in and day out. You also did not ask any parent involvement in making this decision. You are responsible for the well-being of every child in the Norwalk Public School system. Please do better for these youngest, most vulnerable learners. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ralph, I don't have anybody else here signed up. I think you said you've got one more person in line, correct?
Yes, we have George and Pogo. So,
Hi, can you hear me?
yes.
Yes, great. Thank you. Hi. Thank you all so much for opening this public forum tonight. We really appreciate being able to have our voices heard. My name is Alyssa Improglu, and I am a mother to a 3-year-old at NECC residing at 29 Benedict Court in Norwalk, Connecticut. I want to reiterate the concerns about redistributing NECC special ed pre-K classrooms across multiple elementary schools that's been expressed many times tonight. Instead of allocating more funds and resources to this vulnerable population that requires more staff, resources, and space, I fear that the solutions put forth for the 2025-26 fiscal school year will only weaken an already overburdened education structure if it's merged within elementary schools. It will spread thin support services for our children and add to already full caseloads of therapists, teachers, and necessary support service providers. We have dedicated, caring, loving teachers, administrators, and staff, and spreading them across schools or eradicating their positions completely will be a huge disservice to the program. Sorry, that is my 3-year-old in the background. Will be a huge disservice to the program and to our students with special needs who rely on a centralized school and program to support their learning needs. A better solution needs to be considered that ensures the resources and support is provided to the Norwalk Public Schools special ed pre-K program to ensure our students get the quality education they need and they deserve. Again, thank you so much for hearing our voices tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Prado.
And our last speaker is Jeff Williams.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, my name's Jeff Williams at 24 Midrocks Drive. I have a daughter at Wolf Hill Elementary in first grade, son Tyler at NECC. He's in the pre-K program there. First, I'd like to, touch on NECC, really elaborate on what a lot of other people said tonight. So decisions like the one that was made with NECC closing it down at the end of this year, it always comes down to budget. And it's understandable there is a limited amount of money to go around and difficult decisions do need to be made. However, like everyone else here has said very passionately, is that this model is working well. These kids really need the best support, and it's common sense that having all the required services under one roof where the educators can collaborate with each other is the best way for them to get that support. And to reiterate what others have mentioned, why were the parents of NEC students who depend on the school to give their children the best chance at being successful completely left out of the discussion? It has left a sore taste in our mouths and completely eroded trust with the families directly impacted by this decision. Secondly, if there really is no point of return, then I would like to see a detailed plan how Norwalk Public Schools plans to make this a successful model by March 30th. Are there other districts in the area that follow this model, and are they successful with it? What do they do or have in place that makes it successful? Can we please get that information from the districts and determine how much of this can be implemented in Norwalk? So if we go down this path, we can also be successful. Like others have said, I've also heard this model was not successful in the past, so which is why NECC was created in the first place. So why is it going to be different this time? Why did it fail last time, and how are the issues from back then being addressed? How will you guarantee that the children will get all the services they need to meet their IEPs? Transparency on all this would go a long way in building back that eroded trust of NECC parents who unanimously agree moving back to the individual schools is the wrong decision. Lastly, I would like to touch on Wolf Pit Elementary. I would like to advocate for the capital budget request for asbestos abatement and HVAC improvements that were made. The school has an incredible community. We are thrilled to be there. However, the school sorely needs updates to bring it into the 21st century. Lastly, I'd like to advocate to the extent possible the operational budget at Wolf Pit Elementary, which are significant to maintain their current programming and staffing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. That's it. That concludes public comments. Any email comments will be included in the record. That completes our public comments.
Thank you. Okay, the next item of the agenda is superintendent's report. Dr. Stein.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. Over the course of the month of December, we had a number of opportunities to engage the public around our operating and capital budget. The board participated in a workshop as well as during our business meeting. We had an array of opportunities to speak to the budget. Prior to those conversations, we had a series of town halls that allowed us to gather feedback from the public regarding the elements of the budget that the public deem important for us to prioritize, not only in the capital, but also in the operating budget. Today, Mr. Asmani is going to provide a summary of some of those talking points, but also provide the board some insight in some scenarios that we started conversations with SGCs last Wednesday regarding some of the implications that the budget could have across our organization. And as we articulated in December, we needed to make some significant cuts even to get to 9.7%, of which Mr. Asmani and I will speak in greater detail this evening. And in addition to that, we wanted to kind of frame for the board and the public some of the implications. I want to demystify some misconceptions that we've been hearing, particularly about nurses and administrators. When we built some of the simulations, they were meant to simulate possible ways in which the budget could be impacted. Not necessarily that those were decisions that have been already made. For example, when there was mention about nurses being split, reductions in administrators, those are all possibilities, depending on where the final budget comes in. But those are not decisions that have been determined or finalized yet. And I just heard from just some of the conversations today and other conversations, this misconception that this is something that is already happening, which is not necessarily the case. Mr. Osmani, I'll turn it over to you so that you can provide just the summary version of where we are in the budget process and some of the elements that are important to highlight before the board votes on the recommended superintendent budget for FY26.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Estrella, and good evening, board, and members of the public. I did want to take a brief opportunity to just kind of walk you through where we are with the budget. As the superintendent mentioned, you recall on, I believe it was December 11th, we had a very long meeting at Jefferson Elementary, where members of the team presented to you not only the budget recommendations, but some of the operational challenges we had. So this would be just a recap of that conversation, but that entire presentation is now available, has been available on the website, and so is the video. But I just wanted to recap where we are and answer any lingering questions that you may have at this time. So before we get into the numbers themselves, I think it's important to just have a general understanding of who we serve. Obviously, we are in the service of children. This chart, these two charts kind of show you what our enrollment levels have been over time. And so if you look at it, if you look at the blue bars, you see that overall, our overall enrollment has remained rather stable. But if you look at the chart next to it that shows that same enrollment but broken between high needs and non-high needs students, you will see that the greenish bars, you see that those have been increasing. Back in 2019, our high needs population was just over 6,200. As of December 1st of this year, our high needs population now is over 8,000. And by high needs, we identify high needs as students who receive one or more of the following categories: multilingual learners, special education learners, or students who qualify for free and reduced lunches. So that's the makeup of those high need students. And the reason that this graph is significant is because, as you've heard from some of the speakers before, and in the past, is it does cost more to provide services for students with high needs. And therefore, even though that the overall population seems relatively flat, but the mix of our students has become more high needs, which requires more resources to educate and to provide services. The other element of demographic is just looking at who we are by enrollment by race and ethnicity. This is as of December 1st. You'll see that the Hispanic population and the white population are two leading ethnicities in our district, followed by others. But this kind of gives you a sense of who we are. If you look at the free and reduced lunch program, we have about 48% of our students who are eligible for free and reduced lunches, which is again a component of the high need. In terms of our multilingual learners, our MLL population, our distance currently is 23% MLL and 77% non-MLL. And in terms of students needing specialized services, we are almost at 20% of our student population requiring specialized services. this chart kind of compares what the trends have been and compares us with the state. So I'll start with the MLL chart. If you look at that chart, again, and count, the maroon or so colored bars are the overall enrollment of MLL students in our district. And you can see that from 2017, and these are October 1 official numbers of that year, through October 1st of 2024, you see that overall increase in the total MLL population in the district. The two lines that cut across are the rate of those students as a percentage of our population. So you can see that the lower line is the state percentage of state MLL percentage of the total public school students within the state of Connecticut. So again, you'll see that that has also been trending up. The blue bar reflects our population of MLL as a percent of our enrollment. And so you can see that both at the state level and within our district, those have both been trending upwards. But if you compare our district with the state, you'll see that as a percentage of the population, Norwalk Public Schools does have a higher percentage of MLL students compared to the average MLL ratios across the state. The chart next to it is similar information, but this chart relates to specialized learning students, or what we refer to as the prevalence rate. So again, you can see in this chart, there's an overall increase of our SPED students from 2017 through 2024. And the lines again are showing those students as a percentage of our overall student population. So again, you see that that has also been trending up. The difference here with the state is that our rate, our SPED rate, our prevalence rate is actually a little bit lower than the state level. So the state level has a higher SPED prevalence rate within the public schools than we do. But in both cases, the state and the district have both been trending upwards. The other thing that's been mentioned, obviously, we've talked about 80, and there's a slide that shows that almost 80% of our local budget is personnel, because that's the business that we're in. We're a very people-intensive business. So this chart just shows you where the people live and where the people work. So you can see that obviously elementary schools, our high schools, and our middle schools account for the majority of our workforce. Both positions that are locally funded and positions that are grant funded. That's where the needs are and that's where the supports are. And so when you talk about population of our FTE count and the need to make adjustments, you are limited in where you can make those adjustments because a majority of our employees work and serve in our schools. So I'm going to recap what we shared with you back in December in terms of what are the drivers for this year's fiscal year 2026 budget. So, and these are in order of magnitude. So the first one, obviously related to the chart before, as I mentioned, 80% of our budget is employees, and a big component of that are employee health insurance benefits. Right now, we are estimating we have in the budget about a 10% projected increase in health insurance. As you know, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, we now have two health insurance plans. We have the teachers are on the Cigna plan, and the remainder of our employees are on the state plan. Last year, the health insurance plan that NFT members are on went up 15%, where the state plan went up 2%. We were in a meeting just before the holidays. The state shared with us that their initial projection is looking at a 10% increase. We're still waiting to hear what the Cigna increases will be. But for this budget, we've included a blended rate of 10% projections. We're hoping to hear some updated numbers in January, and then we'll get some final numbers in March. But for the budgeting purposes, that accounts for almost a little over $2.5 million in terms of the budget driver. The other component of that is we're self-insured, and therefore we have an insurance account. Over the past couple of years, we have generated some reserves in that account built over time. And so last year, as part of balancing the budget, we were able to reduce the amount of funds that are contributed into the account by 3.5 million. That was a one-time adjustment because we didn't need to put that money in there because the need wasn't there. But now we've reached a point again where we do need to resume that. So that was a one-time fix. So between those two, we are looking at a $6.2 million increase. Obviously, we have our contractual wage increases that are built into the budget, guided by our collective bargaining agreements. And as you see in the staffing table, in addition to that, this year, there are a net increase of a number of positions compared to this time last year. We have about 31 total full-time positions between teachers, paraeducators, and physical therapists. And in the budget book, we've detailed out where these positions are. As was mentioned earlier, we are seeing some shifts from grants. We're receiving less and less. And therefore, we do have about $2.4 million of services providing funding programs under SPED, the summer youth program. We got some security services. These are programs that this fiscal year were funded by grants. Those grants have gone away, but the district right now is planning on continuing these programs because the services are still needed. So that accounts for about 2.4 million. As you recall, for 2 years now, as part of this budget process, the budget has gotten approved. And in working with the city, we have received some supplemental funding. Last year, you'll recall that after the budget was approved, the state was redistributed remaining ARPA dollars, federal grants, to the tune of $5 million. After the budget was approved, 1.8 million of those were provided to the district. So what that allowed us to do was, rather than look to cut 1.8 million in the budget that you had tentatively approved, we were able to fund programs with that funding. Now, again, those programs continue, and therefore this budget now absorbs those programs within the local budget, and hence that 1.8 million driver. We continue to see, as in the charts I shared with you, increase in our MLL students. This year alone, we saw an increase of 250. We're seeing a prevalence rate approaching almost 17%. And in this school, the other driver of that, not only are the numbers of students that we have, but the cost of out-of-district placement. We are actually not placing more students out of district, but just the cost of those students that are out of district has gone up. So we actually have programs in-house that serve the majority of our SPED students, but the portion of our students that are going out of district, those services are increased. This year and the year before, we actually underfunded our SPED total budget with the hope that throughout the year we would get savings, and you're doing some transfers at some point today. And that's how we've been funding our SPED services for 2 years now, through transfers and savings from turnover and those types of things. But we've kind of run out of that as an option. So this budget for this year includes fully funding SPED services, and that's about $1.4 million more than we did in the past. We are seeing also a 10% increase in transportation. We currently have 2 major transportation contracts. We have Durham Bus Services, and then we also have ECS Transportation Services that provide services primarily for our specialized learners. But we are seeing increases in both contracts. One of those contracts, I believe it's Durham, has gone up 7%. The other has gone up 5%. But then we're also have additional needs within those programs. We're adding programs, our choice programs. This year, we'll be adding 4 more buses to the fleet or services for our students. And so those all contribute to that driver. As you know, there is a nationwide shortage of transportation drivers, especially for school buses. And so many of these providers are providing incentives to their drivers so that they can recruit. And that incentive is passed on to us as their clients. And so that is also a driver for our transportation cost within the district. We are excited that we're opening South Norwalk School. Hopefully, so far, it's on schedule, but with the opening of the school in the fall, we do anticipate some additional cost. We have a third grade class that'll be coming on this year, and so with that, there's about a $450,000 price tag that goes with that. But then we also know that there'll be some additional operation costs because that is a brand new building that we don't have online yet. Things like security services, utilities, all of those things related to the operation of a building. So those are an additional $450,000 as well. So combined, you're looking at just under $1 million in new cost at the South Norwalk School. And then with food services, we were fortunate to have received grants during COVID that allowed us to not have to supplement with local dollars expenses related to our food services program. But beginning this year and into next year, we're kind of getting back to that traditional rate where the general fund provides support to the food services fund. So those are some of the drivers that are impacting our budget this year. And again, we went into quite a bit of detail in December about those programs and the composition of those programs. Even though there are some grant programs that we have incorporated into the budget that I just shared, there are some expiring grants that are being phased out. There wasn't room to accommodate these grants within the local budget, even to get us at the 9.7%. So one of these is we received $700,000 in grants for a partnership with Mid-Fairfield Counseling Services. They provided services that were more intensive, related to cognitive and behavior. And so they provided those consultants that served children in our schools. We are no longer able to continue that with this new budget. We were fortunate to have received, within those grants, we were able to offset almost $460,000 in literacy materials. This was actually this offset our capital budget. These funds also allowed us to provide some additional resources within our middle school summer programs this year with high dosage after schools, including transportation costs for those programs. And so these were grant funded. And so that is being phased out this year. We were hoping to expand our Future Ready program, that we had funds in the budget for that. But with those funds going away, we're no longer able to do that. And at this point, we're delaying that expansion, and so those would not be absorbed in the local budget. We did receive some funds from Mid-Fairfield for our middle school faith grant, and those provided therapeutic services. And therefore, that is a grant that we're no longer able to we're no longer able to continue. Dual credit expansion grant, this covered IB and AP after tutoring in the high schools, and therefore we're no longer able to provide that component. We did have a drug and alcohol counselor funded by this grant, serving each high school 1 day per week. With the expiration of this grant, we're no longer able to fund that counselor. And then we also had a district-wide social worker who was a central office resident that provided some services that were grant funded, and therefore that position is not board at this time. And then before I pass it over to the superintendent to talk about some of the personnel actions. This chart just kind of serves to show us where we typically, how the budget flows in terms of the appropriation levels. You see the chart that says BOA approval history. That is the history of our Board of Education budget over the last couple of years. So you can see that the last 3 years, we were 4.5, we dropped to 4, and the year we're in now is a 3% increase. So that kind of gives you a sense of what to expect or anticipate for this budget year. The chart next to it, the budget development, this track where we were last year, where we received our initial request at 14%. We adjusted that to 11%. Last year, the superintendent and your recommended budget was at 8.2%. The mayor last year recommended 4%, and so did the common council. But as you know, when it got to the BET, that number was lowered to 4%. And therefore, this year, if you transpose these numbers, that 8.2% is the 9.7% request that you have before you in the superintendent's recommendation. And then you will approve a budget with that percentage, and then we will be turning this over to the city first thing tomorrow morning, and then we'll be part of that process. But this kind of gives you some context just to get a sense of where, how the budget flows and how those rates change. So with that, I'm going to toss it to the superintendent to kind of go over the next two slides that relate to positions and some of the adjustments we have already done to get us to that 9.7% budget that you have in front of you.
Do you mind speaking to slide 13 first before I go into that? I think it would be.
So as a summary, what the superintendent will show is in the central office, there are 21 positions that we have eliminated from this budget. What you also present is reorganizing and trying to be more efficient in how we use those positions. So we've eliminated 21 positions, but there are 7 positions that have been created within that. So the net impact is 14 overall positions identified to be reduced. And then as superintendent, if I may, in addition to that, we do have an additional $1.2 million reductions that we're still reviewing, that we still have to make additional adjustments to get us to that 9.7%.
So then going back to slide 11, in order for us to get to the 9.7%, we had to make the undesirable decision of making reductions across central office. And I have to say, these positions are roles that are key in supporting schools, providing intervention and resources at the school level that our principals and staff have really benefited from. Unfortunately, given the budget situation that we're going into, it was necessary for us to make modifications starting at the central level, because we want to make sure that we minimize the impact of what's happening at the classroom level. So this is a list of positions that currently hold and that people are fulfilling, and in some cases, some vacancies that we are not backfilling that will be eliminated for fiscal year 26. In order for us to maintain some of the services and support structures that are critical to continuing the systems and operations of things that we have across the organization, we are reorganizing some of the roles, particularly in curricula. We are creating education administrators for humanities pre-K 5, 6, 12 to alleviate some of the loss with our ed administrator for curriculum, professional development, school improvement, as well as ELA. In terms of STEM, which will encompass mathematics and science and other key areas around engineering and other science concentrations, we have redesigned the table of org to have 2 education administrators for STEM pre-K 5 and STEM pre-K 12. These individuals will be supporting curricula, SRBI, and other components. We're working with NASA just to refine the job description, but these roles will help us engage in the curricula work that is critical across the organization and that we work so hard to develop. We also, in digital learning, we have the work around Twilight, Future Ready, our NAIA program that supports students that are in expulsion or out of school suspension. And we've developed a director of Future Ready programs that will support that work. And as you know, with a lot of the transformation that has been happening around digital learning with AI we have to continue to support that work as well as some of the innovation that has been happening across the district, thanks to, some of the grants that we've obtained of our partnership with Digital Promise and Verizon and other partners. So, we are redesigning a role for Director of Digital Transformation to support some of those, processes. In order, to build additional efficiencies, we are restructuring one of the administrative assistant roles to encompass supporting the digital learning and curricula team, as well as providing support to the executive leadership work that happens to supervise and further develop our principal capacity across the district. So those modifications will allow us to, as best as we can, continue to maintain some of the systems and processes that we've built as an organization. It's not going to be an easy task. But given the limitations that we foresee and looking at the funding patterns that we've had historically, we know that even 9.7 is a number that we most likely will not obtain. So we want to start strategically thinking of how we need to reorganize some systems so that we can prepare for some of the challenges ahead. So that kind of summarizes some of the organizational shifts that we need to make in order for us to maintain some of the critical systems around instructional support across the organization. As Mr. Asmani said, we still have $1.2 million of reductions to make. Right now, given the elimination, as you saw in that list that has happened at the central level, if we engage in any further elimination, we would dismantle systems in a way that is unrepairable. So we are looking at other ways in which we can engage in reductions to address that $1 million that is still pending. I'll turn it back to you to continue.
And for those of you that received our copy, there is an addendum to the slide 11 and 12. There was an issue with the print, so there's a one-pager out there that reflects what you're seeing over here. So paper copies made this. So finally, just kind of wanted to kind of close with a sense of how we're funded. And so this is, again, the superintendent mentioned the 9.7% increase. This is by the major object and the line item. And as we have shared, the bulk of it is salaries and benefits. On the general fund side, almost 3/4 of our budget is salaries and benefits. Those non-salaries and benefits include things like the transportation contracts, the out-of-district tuition contracts. And so there are a number of other services, utilities, security, custodial services. So all of these other services that are non-personnel make up about 25% of the remainder of the budget. In looking at how our schools are funded, I thought it'd be helpful to just kind of give you a chart just to look at a typical school. This is an actual budget of an elementary school in our district. This school budget, the local budget, is about $5.9 million. And as you can see, salaries and benefits account for 97% of the budget. So this particular school only has 3% that's non-personnel. And when you've talked about making adjustments or reductions to the school budget, it's really difficult to do so without impacting your personnel and benefits. That's just because that's the nature of how our schools operate. So for this particular school, they have 369 students. We do have mandated class sizes that are stipulated in the collective bargaining agreement. So in terms of determining how you staff the school, you also have to make sure that you don't fall out of compliance with that. So this particular school has a total of 20 sections, given the number of students. And this is how this particular school is staffed. They have a total of 77 FTEs split between local funding and grant funding. But essentially, as we've been saying, that schools are really people. That is how our schools are funded. There is additional information. This QR code takes you to the budget page of our website. I did provide you a budget, superintendent's recommended budget book, which is also on the website that provides a lot more detail. It is a 90-page document that has much more details on the budget. Included is the superintendent's message. We talk about overview and highlights. Some of the drivers that I recapped are included in there. Gives you a sense of how Connecticut public schools are funded. It's included in that book. We also include a lot of financial information in that book. There's a whole financial section that includes our budget assumptions. We provide a 5-year history by object with 3 years of actual budget, the current year and the proposed year. We do that for the general fund. We do that for the grant fund, and we also do that for the food services fund as well. There's also an informational section in that book that provides overview of some of the achievements we've received as a district. It includes projections on enrollment, but we also provide a rather detailed analysis of our staffing because we get that often. Where are the staffing? So that book that you have does have a 4-year summary of staffing changes by category, but it also includes 4-year staffing changes at the building level. So you could see a particular school, you could see a particular department within the district. And so there's 4 years of history with position titles. And therefore, if anybody has a question, how many administrators, how many teachers and all of that, you could see there. And then we included a column on the end that kind of tells you what the variance over time. So that is included in the budget book as an additional resources. It is already on our website, and so you have those. And finally, as was mentioned before, we have been talking, one of the things we've been trying to educate people is now that you know how we're made up and how we're funded, when it comes to making reductions, what could be the potential impact? And these are not these are scenarios, but there are scenarios that districts, public schools have done. And some of these scenarios took place here several years ago. So this one just kind of shows what the potential impacts could be. And again, there could be a number of combinations to get to the number. So what this slide is intended to show is, okay, what does 2% look like in terms of our budget? And so this is just a scenario. As the superintendent mentioned, these are not decisions that have been made. We don't know what the funding level will be at the city level, but I thought it was important for the public and for you just to have an idea of what are some of the possible mixes. And so this is just one of many scenarios. This one looks at, I talked about the mandated class sizes. And so what if we, in order to reduce the number of reductions, if we maxed, in a class to get as close as you are to that class. And so what would that look like? Obviously, it would be larger class sizes. And in doing so, you could potentially reduce the number of educators if you did that without necessarily impacting students. You could look at the number of paraeducators that are in the district. I believe back in 2017, I think the district eliminated or sought to eliminate paras at the kindergarten level. So these are combinations, and these are things that we've done. We have dean of students that are new, and these were just put in this year. But if you were to do something different, that's also a possibility. We did talk about, there was a time in this district where we did share elementary school principals. In lieu of eliminating principals, you could share principals, and that would also kind of safeguard some of the challenges that we would have. We have secretaries in our schools. Some schools have multiple secretaries, but that would also be an option that you have at disposal. There was, as you heard, sharing of nurses. What would that look like if we were to do that? Not saying that we are doing that, but if we were. Looking at shared elementary school counselors. There was a time when we didn't have counselors in our elementary schools, and we were fortunate to get counselors back in. But if you were to share counselors in the schools, what would that look like? And then there was a time where the district did eliminate programs and the superintendent brought back middle school sports after a long time. But this is just an example. What does 2% of our budget look like in terms of actual costs and how they impact the services we provide? And again, it's just a scenario. You could do a number of options to get to that, but that is really all I have in terms of an overview for you. And the team and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
I open it, I just make the board for questions and the operating budget.
I'll make a comment. I've often said to you, to sharpen your pencil because I know that we have a big job ahead of us. But what I realize is that to sharpen the pencil is it's very challenging to do that because so much of what we do will still impact children because we are a people intense business. So it's very difficult to say sharpen the pencil to try to realize some additional savings when everything that we do really is going to touch kids.
So the 9.7 million that we're requesting. Percent. We're requesting. The realistic part of it is overall, what we're losing as far as our grants are concerned. Out of that percentage, we're not able to even look at bringing those programs back either, correct?
Correct.
So in lieu to that, out of that as well, what percentage of that is going to go towards salary?
What percentage
Of
of
the 9.7 will go to
Personnel?
overall, right,
Yeah.
personnel. What percentage of that?
So this is the year over year, and the first two lines are salaries and personnel. Personnel and benefits combined are about 75% of the total general fund budget. Does that answer the question? Okay,
That's what I thought. So hypothetically, when you also gave us a breakdown of the back page,
yes.
from a percentage standpoint. And hopefully we don't have to get to this point, because it's, Dean of Students is something that we just added on, and it's also something that's an integral part to our program. So are we prepared? Are we prepared to move forward if we lose any of these programs? And what I mean by that is we will have to, before we even think about cutting within, because you already did up top already in central office. Do we have to mess with that again as well in order to move forward? Will we start in central office or we start in the buildings?
I think
No, so what we would do at this point, we obviously would need to know where the city is considering funding us. And then we would go back to the drawing board, working with a board and everybody else to see what can we do. Are there other areas? Now, as you saw, back to this. Yeah, so as you go to this chart, you kind of see where people live, right? Because even when we talk about central office, as you've seen in that list, there are a number of functions, a significant amount of central office functions are in support of the schools. They just don't live in the school, they live in the central office and go to the central office. But again, if you're looking at this distribution of staffing, there's only so much that you can do outside of the schools, right? And even in central office, you will still be impacting positions that directly impact our students. Yeah, and we've made, there's reductions in digital learning, finance, HR already in this proposal that you have in front of you. But we would have to reload this.
because when you look at the original in order for us to have maintained all the programs that we have and what we had centrally, we were calculating we needed around 14.4%. So in order for us to get to 9.7%, we had to make some significant reductions.
Yes.
And if you also recall, in the past, we were operating, coming in with special education being at a deficit in order to avoid layoffs. This year, it's just not good budgeting practices. We are coming in at exactly what we need.
But the expenses on special education has increased, has it like doubled, tripled?
It depends on the service that you're looking at. Rob, you want to join us for this part?
So in terms of looking at our programs and looking at our costs, they are going up significantly. And I presented on that. That we looked at program year over year, and you can see that increase in the cost of the programs on our budget.
So we can call that a real driver of the increase.
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
the need. I was recently talking with a state representative because we're all looking for more means of money. And she told me yesterday, this was Representative Tracy Mara, said that the legislation is, the Education Committee is putting forward a state bill, an SB, for special education, and it's number 1. So it's SB 1. She said that means the priority is in the number order. So that would be for our next year budget, the one we're talking about right now. So I'm just sharing that as something that could be hopeful. It makes my heart really sick. I love you, but it's very sad to listen to.
No, you're correct. So, that HB1 is actually a $500 million bill that they put forward. The funding will be directed towards ECS to be redistributed to school districts. So we would be one of the recipients. They're still trying to
increase the percentage.
To increase the percentage.
Yes.
So we already received ECS allocation, but they will provide an additional $5 million to the pot, $500 million to the pot. And so, but we don't know, it's just, at this point, it's just been introduced. The governor will be, we'll know in the next couple of months where that goes.
But it would impact.
But it would impact
Budget that we're talking about.
And I would just say that I think one of the conversations that I've been hearing, it's centered around specialized programming and really looking to be able to offer more specialized programming in districts versus having to use out-of-district facilities. So that's part of the thinking behind it, because there's only so many places and costs have gone up substantially.
Thank you for that added information.
I also have like concerns surrounding the grant funded positions that are ending in regards to like the mental health for the students across the district. So is there a plan comprised of how we will continue or get creative to support our students in mental health as far as like the drug and alcohol counselor and counselors, social workers? Because, we could assume that students' mental health that are impacted will impact behaviors, which means we need teams of students and AP to help with the behaviors that could take place in the schools.
One of the things that I think I reiterated to the board in the past that ESSER funds have depleted the need and supports that families and students need has not subsided. And that the supports that they need are continuous. They're not going to be resolved in the next year or so. And I think that's one of our biggest challenges because the grants that are coming to a conclusion are providing services that we currently need and we will continue to need in the upcoming academic school year. Unfortunately, given the fact that we started at 14.4, that didn't even include those grants that were subsiding, that would have been a number greater than. And to get to 9.7, it was impossible for us to sustain those programs. We are in conversation with some of the providers that have been supporting us in providing these services at the district level and looking at creative ways and so that we can partner. The challenge we have is that the amount of resources or grants available are very limited for us to even compete against. In the past, there was a number of different grant opportunities. The amount of grants that are available right now are very limited for us to even compete for these resources. So although this is exciting and we will continue to find ways in which we can potentially bring these services back, we know that it continues to be a significant need. And one of the drivers that led to some of the success that we have seen in terms of chronic absenteeism reductions, as well as suspension rate reductions. So we understand the value that the resources have played, yet we are at a bind because we don't have the financial means right now to continue to sustain the programs that were at one point grant funded.
I think next week when we have the workshop, that we'll talk a little bit about the student youth survey. We'll see some of the positive impact of that. And so I think continuing the conversation with some of our providers on how we can try and be creative is important, but it's definitely a concern because we have made such great progress in that realm.
I mean, to the point that the state has asked Rob and the team to present some of the findings of the work that has happened, and we've been sharing best practices across the state of the work that has been happening in Norwalk in those areas. It's very unfortunate that we are in the predicament that we are in because in order to maintain as best as we can programs in the classroom, other things that are critical for student development and learning might be at risk.
There's also that misconception that some people have that because the pandemic is basically over, that all of these issues that families and children face are over, and that's not true. You know, and trying to get the help that they need. And like Mary Ellen said, you know, there's different groups, cabinet, there's board members, the superintendent, everybody's going to different meetings with the state to try and plan and try to get, you know, more ideas on how to get funding. But if you look at page 10, what I had mentioned before in other meetings is when we got zero funded 21-22, that was the start of a downfall right there. Every year there are increases, every year things go up, every year we need funding. But as our budget keeps getting less and less and less, what is not being understood is the less you give us, that money that we need rolls over to the following year. And then that money adds into what we need to keep, you know, level. So I'm hoping that the people that are making these decisions on our budget are looking at these and not looking at us as a corporation where we just cut dollar amounts. We are looking at children. We are looking at future. We are looking at real estate too, because the district has to be a good district in order for people to move here and buy homes. So there is a lot.
And I kind of want to jump on what you said about, the problems, things that were addressed during the pandemic by additional funds. Those problems existed before the pandemic. Like, there have been needs for counseling and mental health services and everything that we've been doing. The pandemic offered an opportunity to get these emergency funds so that we could address these issues. They're not, as you said, they're not going away, but they existed before. And to expect, this Band-Aid of what we got then to forever fix ongoing challenges that families have is just, unreasonable. Something that always comes up for me as we have these conversations, it's frustrating. It's like, and we should absolutely be feeding all of our students. It shouldn't be on us as a city to be funding that. Our whole country should be feeding all of our kids, but that's neither here nor there. But it's something that frustrates me when we have these conversations. And, as Diana was just saying about, our education and our schools are the backbone of our community. But, I hope everyone knows, like, we're still very aware that this does have a direct impact on taxpayers. Like, we see that, but also we see the extreme value for our whole community because this is more than just the schools. But I do want to put out there that, like, there is an awareness. We are not, approving things without realizing that it has an impact. But that is how strongly we feel that
We're taxpayers
we need
too.
this.
We all desire to choose.
We
We're
pay
taxpayers too,
tax.
right? For me, it's personal with regard to the work that's been done on reducing suspension rates. For so long, we've had challenges with that, particularly as it relates to our Black and brown boys. And we're finally starting to see that come down because of the deployment of deans and APs and all of that. So my concern is how this may impact that. Because we certainly have made headway in that way, and that plays into our equity, which is something that I ran on. Just in terms of making sure that we were making things more equitable in terms of disproportionality with our students. And we are making headway in that, so that's a concern.
And if I may add, also our counselors, our social workers.
All of the supports.
Adding those additional interventions at the elementary school level that were not there in the past have been pivotal at making a lot of the shifts that we've been able to accomplish. Because the elementary schools were really an afterthought in thinking about providing counseling services, and that's something we were able to put into place as a result of these resources that now are in jeopardy, unfortunately, given our current fiscal situation.
Educating students is a lot more than math and reading, like those counseling services. And there are a lot of elementary students who need them and cannot afford them outside of receiving those in the schools. It's critical to their whole ability to be successful learners.
Yes. And even outside of the classrooms, we have the state champions in different sports. We have, Norwalk is known as Pride with the arts, with the plays. People come from out of town to come and see the talents that Norwalk has. And, I'm looking at it, and that's part of some of the conversations, tough conversations that we have. And like Ashley said, it's not an easy, let's just cut here and there. It's heavy duty discussions. I know today we were quiet, and it might look to the public like we don't care, or we're not thinking, or we're just, rubber stamping. But we have had some really, really tough conversations, and it is hitting home for some of us, and it's been very difficult. I don't know, I can't be more thankful for Dr. Stray and her team, because like Sherry said, we've been moving in a positive direction, and the thought of going backwards is you can't sleep at night. You have that stress, you have to think about that, and they're on 24/7. They're not on, just Monday through Friday. I mean, there was a comment on social media, how dare you take a vacation? They are human too, and they are working very hard for the children of Norwalk, and they all deserve a vacation also. I don't know, that's where I'm at.
Just another thought on this, when I look at how well are we succeeding at our goal to reach all students, one of the metrics we all look at is graduation. And in the last 3 years that I've been involved here, our graduation rate has gone up, and we're getting close to 93% now. A big part of that to me is what's been happening with the Twilight and that Future Ready. And when I look at this, that so much organizing for those students for an alternate way to finish their high school diploma, we're forced to take away some of the leadership there. And that really hits me in a very clear way. We want to get our kids through the pathways, the courses, graduation, certainly and beyond, but that's one marker that I feel really impacted with this reduced budget that we're looking at. And I'd like to also say to other taxpayers, as we all are, I know the mayor and the Common Council friends that are working at that. It's tough. It's tough when you don't have enough to share. And so my feeling is we're all working hard, and I respect their work, and I respect everybody here that we're working as hard as we can to figure out how to do the best for the children.
Any further comment, questions about the first part? So there are pieces that I want to speak to. And one of them involves the family. What's your translation on name? Rob, did you want to? Relax. So I want to start off first and foremost, thanking the NECC parents for their advocacy this evening. I know that the conversation and the news doesn't come easy. As a parent, I'll speak first of 2 children with special needs, now in college. But I understand the learned journey that it is for parents that have children that need specialized services. And the emotional roller coaster that process entails. I went through it as a parent, and I, as someone in the education field, understand the complexities around that process. And I cried through the process because as a parent, it's hard sometimes to grapple with some of the things that you expect and some of the ways in which things plan out. Well, my boys are doing great. I'm really proud of my 2 boys. They're in their 2nd semester in college, and they're product of Norwalk Public Schools. So it speaks to the great work that we're doing as a community. And the fact that I chose to bring my kids here speaks to my belief in what we do as a system. The decision of engaging this transition was not easy. We've been engaging in this conversation for now a number of years, believe it or not. We've been hearing feedback from families. We've been hearing feedback from teachers. We've been hearing feedback from union leadership regarding some of the challenges that were present in the program. One of which was a prevailing conversation was around really having the program provide the service that it was intended to by having a 50-50 model. Students receiving services, those students that did not, with students that did not have IEPs, and having that 50-50 framework. And that has been a hard task because when we have engaged families around coming to the site, it was really hard to convince families to come because of the secluded location in which NECC is located. And this has been an ongoing conversation. We had this conversation with Principal Nina. We had this conversation before with Amaris Melendez when she was supporting the program. And we've been problem solving and trying to figure out ways in which to do it. And there has not been an easy solution in how to navigate that. As a result of that, we started trying out and piloting pre-K programs at Sono. And then we have successfully transitioned because there was not enough space at NECC. We transitioned one of the classes to our Cranberry Elementary building because part of the model, and just to provide context, in our original strategic plan prior to the one that we're fulfilling now, part of the plan was that every elementary school in Norwalk Public Schools would have a pre-K program in their building. And that goal was put on hold because our elementary schools were overcrowded. Our elementary schools are not overcrowded at this point, so we have the feasibility of transitioning those programs back into our community schools. Originally, they were placed at NECC because there was no way to adequately accommodate them in our neighborhood schools. So part of our goal has been to retransition back these classes into our school community, particularly because as a district, we have changed our philosophy around how we think about special education services and providing services for our students that need special education services. And I'm very mindful of the way I talk about this because I don't believe that they're special education students. I believe that they're students that need special education services. And in thinking about that work across the district, we had to change the mindset across the organization, particularly because not only do we have our little babies that were coming in needing services, but we also have kids in the K-12 continuum also needing services. And when I came to the district, the way services were being provided was in a very isolated, segregated manner. And we wanted to shift that approach. We wanted students to feel that they were part of the community school that they were in, that the principal had the same investment in them as they did any other student in the building. And we made some strategic moves where principals now own the responsibility not only of students receiving specialized services, but also students receiving language services or multilingual learners, which was not the case in the past. So I've heard historically some concerns around, in some cases where classes were, pre-K programs were at the elementary school sites and they were made to feel excluded or not part of the community. Because our philosophy is very different now and they would be fully acclimated into the school community, the principal will have ownership of the class. That model is very different. We believe that by bringing in the pre-K classrooms back into our elementary schools will allow our students and families to have an opportunity to build a relationship early with the school, build a relationship with the related service providers early on, and really embrace our staff, embrace them, and they embrace our staff in the process. There were concerns brought up about service providers and making sure that the students were receiving all the related services. As a practice across the district, every year, we have to reassess what services every building needs because as students graduate out, new students are coming in, those new students need additional services. In the same way we go through that process for students across the organization, we would be going through that process for the students that will be newly integrated into the different elementary schools across the district. And we're going to be very intentional about how we place students across the organization, particularly because we know that we have programs and it's not in every single school. So we would strategically work with families to make sure that wherever students are placed, that there is continuity as best as we possibly can from pre-K into their kindergarten placement. So that families can build that relationship with the PT, OT, psychologist, counselor, principal, and making sure that that relationship starts early on and continues through their child's elementary school experience. And I know change is hard. And there's always ways in which we can be more effective communicating. And I heard a lot of feedback and we'll take that feedback. We're always looking to improve. Principal Nina had to leave, I think, because he was here, but I know he told me that he couldn't stay for the whole time. But on Thursday, I don't know the parents that are here, if you haven't seen it already, in Parent Square, there will be a meeting, I believe at 6:30 Thursday, right? With the principal and members of the team to not only hear some of your concerns so that we can think through and make sure that your concerns are addressed as we plan forward, but also to give you more information around the thinking, the design process. I think there was some misinformation about this $1 million that I don't know where it's coming from, that I think during that meeting, we can get more clarity around, because this is not an added cost to the district. We have been thinking about this even pre this budget conversation, just to be clear, because we thought this was a better practice and a better approach in servicing the needs of our children. And it aligned with our strategic priority of bringing our pre-K programs back. We shouldn't have children in gyms receiving services. And right now at NECC, we have a class in a gym because we don't have enough space. We cannot ask the senior center to give up their space. That is not an option. We've asked in the past to collaborate with the senior center, and there has been some hesitation. I just want parents to know that we have tried. It has not been something that we've been able to successfully attain for whatever reason. And it's not a space that we're gonna get access to. So I just don't want us to build false hopes. And I also want to be respectful of our senior citizens in our community and like not try to take something that they value, right? But also, I don't want parents to think that this was not something that we didn't think about. This is something we've been thinking about as a team for now close to 2 years into how to address, because we want to make sure that when we service our children, we're servicing them well. We've heard from teachers for the past 2 years concerns about the fact that the 50-50 model is something that we've struggled to maintain, to even achieve in many cases, and in some cases to maintain. And it's something that we're really committed to. We know it's a model that works when we have the right balance. We've heard from families that would like to participate in the program, but because of its location, having the program in the community schools at closer proximity to where people live will allow more accessibility for families that are not receiving services to take advantage of the program as well. So all of that to say that there's been a lot of thought put forward in thinking about this, and we are still open to receiving feedback in how we can make this transition as smooth and as productive as possible. We actually invited the principal of Cranberry Elementary, Jenna Masone, because she's been an enormous advocate in our district around making sure that students needing specialized services are well cared for. And she can speak a little bit about the pre-K program that she's leading, if you want to come forward. Because she's been a pilot, and I think that they've achieved great success in supporting our little ones. So if you can speak to the work that you're doing, it would be great.
Sure. So I'm happy to have a pre-K program, school readiness program this year and last year at Cranberry, but it's not my first time leading pre-K in an elementary school. So I had a pre-K, 2 pre-K classrooms when I was at Brookside, and I had 1 pre-K classroom when I was at Wolfpet.
So I've done this a few times, and it's a beautiful thing. We embrace our youngest learners as part of the school community. They build relationships, families build relationships with staff very early on. We do have the appropriate ratio of students with IEPs and students without IEPs, and it works. We have two very qualified special education, dually certified special education and pre-K teachers that run the program with a paraeducator. Kids get all the services they need. We have OT, PT, speech, BCBA, everything they need at Cranberry. The one thing that I did want to address, I think, and I can understand that parents worry about, is a fifth grader kind of going to run right over my preschoolers as they walk in the building? The hours are actually different. So we run our hours from 8:30 to 2:30. So our pre-K kids get safely in the building before anybody else does, and they get out before, the busy dismissal happens at the end of the day. But our older students are caretakers of the little kids. So sometimes they like to go and visit that classroom and they read to them. If they're having trouble walking down the hallway, they'll partner with them and walk with them down the hallway. The secretaries greet the families and say hello to the kids, are really a part of our community. And to start that at the age of 3 is amazing. So I have always embraced pre-K classrooms in the pre-K 5 elementary school setting. It works. So not to take away from what's happening at NECC, but just to share with you the experience from my perspective. It's great to be able to have very highly qualified staff. Staff is included in all of our faculty meetings, our professional development opportunities. They also connect with other pre-K teachers across the district on professional development days. We're very proud of our autism spectrum disorder family support group. We have 4 events that happen. If anybody's free next Thursday, you're welcome to come to Cranberry. And we have, pizza for all the families and guest speakers, and I have more staff than I need, so everybody wants to be there. And I will share with you that our 2 pre-K teachers, because they also have kids on the autism spectrum, attend those events also, along with our paraeducators and our other special education staff. So they're really an integral part of our school, and we love it that way at Cranberry, and I loved it that way at Wolf Pit, and I loved it that way at Brookside. So I appreciate that it's a change, but it does work. And the kids, if they have services that are on their IEPs that they're entitled to, then they're provided. We look at the ratios and give them what they need.
And in terms of, there was concern about the providers will be transitioning with the students. So the teachers, the paraeducators would be the same individuals coming into the different schools across the district and providing the service. The caseloads would, like I said before, would be assessed similar to what we did at Cranberry, to make sure that we have adequate personnel to provide the services for our students. But I think somebody who in my prior experience had a pre-K 4 program in every single elementary across my district. I've seen this work with a lot of success. Principal Nina led a pre-K 8 school that had 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds with the kindergarten and all the way up to 8th grade in the same building, and led that with a lot of success. So he also brings a lot of expertise in terms of the feasibility of doing this in a manner that works well for all students. So I know that this comes with a lot of emotion, and it's hard to engage in this change. But I think that in the long run, it will be very beneficial for our youngest students to our older students, like you said, because it allows everybody in the community to embrace each other from the onset. But like I said, on Thursday of next week, the principal, alongside members of our team, will be engaging the families with more specificity and also an opportunity to just listen to some of the concerns so that as we plan forward, we're planning with all of the parents' thoughts in mind and keeping their concerns at the top of mind. With that also, thank you so much. You're welcome. Dana, really appreciate you being here after a very long day.
And I just have one piece to make.
Oh, sure.
With the transition when the program went to Cranberry, and we do this every single year, and Dr. Estrella, you mentioned it, but I want to reiterate that piece is that our team analyzes like caseloads and workloads and really taking a look at what are the needs. And so if by adding more students with different levels of speech or OT, then the team would then make adjustments to what is needed at that building so that those services can be met. And that's what happened at Cranberry.
And although we have a hiring freeze, I think that was something that I heard. The hiring freeze does not apply for special education or hard to staff areas. Those are legally mandated positions that we would have to fill regardless of, and we are still filling if we find the personnel. And in some cases that we're looking at other alternatives to find personnel in hard to staff areas. But those jobs, we continue to search and fill where there are vacancies. So I don't want people to have the misconception that because we have a hiring freeze, that we're not hiring for those positions that are critical and legally mandated, because we are. Any questions from the board in respects to what I described so far? I think to tier to this, one of the things that we've been talking about, and now I'm transitioning the conversation to something different. This is something to build efficiencies. As we continue to talk about ways in which looking at the budget outlook this year and thinking about in the future ways in which we can optimize resources. One of the things that we're looking at with 46 Concord Street is the possibility of moving the family center there, as well as looking at moving our Future Ready program, Twilight NAIA program to that site. In doing so, it allows us to bridge efficiencies in terms of building maintenance, in terms of like heating, maintaining those aspects, but also it allows us to reduce the need for the number of security and other like maintenance factors that would play out in maintaining a number of facilities when we can consolidate it to one. We also have a lease for this program, for this building, which will be eliminated if we transition this program, as well as the 18 to 22 to the 46 Concord Street facility. We are looking at potentially taking this into consideration for FY26, but that's highly dependent on a number of factors. So if it doesn't happen for FY26, then it would happen for FY27. Those factors include the Sono building, the new Sono building, and when it would be completed, because there's possibility, in any construction, anything can happen. There could be potential delays, and if there are delays, that would offset and push the date to shift. Also, we want to have the family, the health-based clinic here that will also service our families. We would have to see how we could potentially shift that to that location. And just being really intentional in terms of how we transition the different programs that we have housed here, as well as the Briggs building and the backup Briggs. So we're looking at all of these moving pieces and potentially bringing them together to further build efficiencies across the organization. And also find better ways of interconnecting and building collaborations amongst programs that will enable us to strengthen partnerships across the organization. But I just wanted just to bring that to life to the board as something that we're looking at the possibilities around as we continue to think about ways that we could build efficiencies that won't directly impact what happens in the class.
That concludes, I had a question with that. Would the building as is, be able to house everything, or would there need to be any adjustments, renovations made?
I mean, the building as is will be able to house it in terms of the amount of space. We might have to make some modifications in some areas, in terms of reconfiguring where we will put office and things like that. So those are some of the things that we're looking at right now, and if it makes sense.
It probably would be like a minor level.
Minor, just making adjustments. I think the biggest challenge would be the clinic, but we already have a nurse station there, so we could potentially utilize that space to make some
It strikes me as a really good location to get to. Either
It's easily
buses and
accessible.
trains and bike paths, and I mean, it's just, it's a.
And parking
good
too.
location.
Better parking.
Okay,
We have a
yes.
good parking lot there. I'm sorry. I didn't-
No, it's okay. I had a question actually back to the NECC and the questions about the playgrounds.
Mhm.
What are our playgrounds looking like? Are they accessible? Would we need to do some updates to them?
I'll have Sandra speak to
Is that-
the playground. But that's in collaboration with the city.
Is that,
And we,
it's on our radar? I mean.
and I'll let her talk because I know there's some projects that she's doing.
Actually was feeling a little neglected today.
I was like, I'm sorry, I pulled you out of your corner.
It wouldn't be a full day without you bringing you forward.
Thank you. Well, we were talking about it earlier today because we actually had a meeting on some concerns that were raised by Merrimack parents around ADA compliance in the playgrounds. So the city does have an ADA official that actually goes out and assesses various parts of the city for ADA compliance. Our current playgrounds do have preschoolers, and those schools do have students with IEPs and various needs. But we can engage the city to actually make sure that the places where we are moving the programs to meet those ADA compliances, or things need to get done to make sure that we can actually add accessibility. But all the playgrounds currently do have the correct age equipment. We do have 2 capital project improvements that Recreation and Parks is putting forward as part of their request for this year. And one is for the Fox Run younger child playground. We call it the kindergarten, but it's not just for kindergarten, but it's, for lack of better words, and for the Kendall community. So both of those communities have been pretty vocal in wanting their playgrounds upgraded. The city has a plan for upgrading playgrounds, and it's part of their just their own efforts. But we would engage with them, and Mr. Stowers has been pretty open about us just asking them directly for the list of priorities. So
Yeah, the mention of the communication boards was something valuable to keep in mind.
So we will bring that, because that I don't think we have in too many places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
So that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Okay, we're at the action consent section of the agenda. I need to ask if there is any changes concerned with the approval of minutes.
I just have a minor detail. When I chaired the meeting for the 17th, the pledge, it notes that you led us, and we just need to make that change in the notes that it was Preeti Pritchett and not Diane Carpio.
Yes.
That's
So
it.
the December 17th
December 17th.
minutes. I was not here, so we need to update those minutes.
They're so used to hearing.
I think it was just force of habit, whoever was typing up the notes. Mhm. Okay, so with that change in the minutes, we have approval of personnel, approval of budget transfers, approval of trips, and approval of minutes. Motion to approve all four items. Mary Ellen, seconded by Jasmine. All in favor, please say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Is Kara still?
Put a
up?
little hand in high.
Mhm.
Put a little hand up.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't see your hand,
I don't know if
Kara.
that's saying aye or wanting to speak.
Thank you, Kara. Next action item is approval of policy 6001, enrollment in an advanced course or program and challenging curriculum and regulation. 6001A, enrollment in an advanced course or program and challenging curriculum. These have already existed. If you were looking at your notes, the italics were the notes that we were adding in just to keep up with all the changes going through. So motion to approve.
Just want to say that, the importance of this policy in terms of reducing barriers to opportunities for advanced courses for our kids. Again, this speaks to the historical disproportionalities. And at the same time, we want to recognize the continued importance of engaging with students, parents, and guardians throughout the educational experience. So I'm glad to support this.
Seconded by?
Second.
Howard, thank you. All in favor, please say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. And Kara, I'm assuming that's hand number 2.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Kara. Approval of the tentative FY 25-26 BOE operating budget. Motion to approve. Ashley, seconded by
I second.
Mary Ellen. All in favor, please raise your hands. Say aye.
Can I make some comments for you?
Sure.
Just to kind of reiterate what I talked about before, given the constraints that are present in this budget, I will support it, but I do it really kind of, conflicted because I know that we're going to be forced to make some changes. And we can see that we're on a good track. At the same time, this is something that I'm going to support this budget. I'd also like to note that we see in other area municipalities, Fairfield, for instance, is looking for a 6.5% increase. Our neighbor in New Canaan is looking at 4%. I feel like what you had indicated before, we've had a history of getting underfunded anywhere between 3% and 4%. And so now it is accumulated to the point where it's where it is. And so, again, I will support the budget, but it's definitely, and I just want to say too, I'm a taxpayer as well. We do understand the implication for taxpayers. However, as Ms. Carpio mentioned, a municipality is only as good as the school district. So.
Thank you. All right. I need a motion to approve tentative FY 25-26 BOE operating budget. Ashley, seconded by Mary Ellen. All in favor, please say aye, raise your hands.
Aye.
And Kara also, thank you. Okay, so we need to add to our agenda. If I can get a motion to add, we need to do the approval of the revised table of organization. Linda discussed that in today's meeting, and that was the changes at central office. So motion to add that to the agenda.
Do you want me to provide some context?
No. Unless somebody has questions. I just went over.
Yeah, we just went over.
I just wanted to make sure that people I just need your approval.
All right, so
Yes.
approval of revised table of organization. Motion to approve.
Motion to
Ashley,
put it on the agenda first.
okay, Ashley put it on the agenda.
I said.
Mary Ellen approves first motion, second motion. Sherry, Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That's unanimous.
Put it on the agenda. approve
Yes.
it.
Well done.
How we're doing.
All right, so committee representative reports.
I have a quick library liaison
Mhm.
report. The Norwalk Public Library's next significant program will be on February 1st and 2nd for Take Your Child to the Library Day. During these 2 days, children can come in and draw a picture of a scene from a book they loved to hang on the book tree that they're creating. And in exchange for their drawing, they will receive a book that they can keep forever. And this was due to an anonymous donation that was given to the library.
That was very nice.
And then there will be some upcoming details about programming for February break to be announced.
Thank you. Any other committee updates, Sherry?
Ad hoc committee, Ms. Freedy Johnson and Ms. Fayois led us in a ad hoc committee meeting. And they reported on lots of progress. We've got great news that's taking place at West Rocks and Brian McMahon relative to addressing disproportionality in advanced classes. Right now we are seeing a reduction in incidents for Black students. And the administration is implementing interventions to continue to address these issues. And again, just happy to see that we are making improvements in that area and looking forward to that continuing.
Thank you.
I'd just like to report on the curriculum meeting we had minutes before this meeting started. Some very exciting courses that are being recommended in the high schools, all the 4 high schools. Just to give you a sense at one of the new classes would be in McMahon for studying drones as it pertains to marine data capturing, so this is something, I'm not sure how they put the drones out in the Norwalk River and get information. That is going to be a course. And another that caught my eye was a textile course at P-Tech that was set up for attracting a wider variety of kids to it, where it's developing clothes that have some kind of digital stuff on the clothes that you can change the color of your clothes as minutes or hours go by. So that sounded really interesting to me. So it's textile design at P-Tech. All right, I'm sure I didn't give the wide enough range on that, but very exciting courses that are being proposed to offer at all the high schools.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Estrella, you want to talk?
Thanks. Rob, do you want to share about the special education group that's starting in January?
So Deirdre and Veronica, they're both here actually. They, one of their goals this year was to really create a special education parent advisory committee. And so that will be sending out the flyer this week, and that will help to engage families in conversation and to really get their voice in the different processes that we have, the different programs. And I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to.
This is addition to the subcommittee, the IPAD.
Right, to our subcommittee.
The special ed IPAD, yeah.
This existed in the past, right? Like something about this was presented to us at the specialized learning subcommittee.
So
There was something in the
Correct.
past that we were trying to bring back.
In the past, we had the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee.
Okay.
And there were a lot of pieces that needed to be in place. And I think it was around 2021 that it ended up disbanding because they didn't have someone who wanted to be the president. They didn't have someone who wanted to be the vice president because you had to have very specific members involved. And so through the conversations with the special ed administrators and team, really being able to not have to build in, like have a president and a vice president, but really making it more about an advisory committee where parents can come and share things that they are seeing, should get feedback, being able to share something that's going really well or some challenges that they're facing so that the team can really be proactive versus reactive in situations.
January 29th here at 5:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more. Thank you, Madam Chair. So January 20th, we will celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the day will start off with a community breakfast at 8 a.m. at Grace Baptist Church on 17 West Avenue. The breakfast is $15. There's a couple of numbers here for you to call, and if anybody is interested, I can stay behind and we can get that to you later. The Norwalk Public Schools Student and Staff Program will be at 11 o'clock, held at Norwalk High School. And our very own Mr. Howard White will be the keynote speaker. And the day will end with a evening program at Norwalk City Hall, starting at 5 o'clock, and the Reverend Darian Jones of the Bethel AME Church at Stamford will deliver the keynote.
I'll be there.
Awesome. And finally, last item, board member announcements. This is where any board member can share anything about themselves, and we get to learn a little bit about each other, and the public gets to know about us. So if anybody has anything to share.
Yes, I have a question. Where have you been?
Stop it. So I missed my only meeting in 5 years. I was actually in Germany visiting my son that's studying in Germany. So I was there for 10 days. So very, very happy. He's doing well. He's flourishing. Product in Norwalk Public Schools and P-Tech.
That's what I said. Did he go to P-Tech?
Yes, he
Yes, he
did.
did.
So when you talk about P-Tech, I'm a proud P-Tech mom, but I'm also a bear. So once a bear, always a bear. Anyone else? Okay, so thank you, everyone. It's been a long day. Thank you for everything, and motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Jerry, thank you. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night, thanks, guys.